Saturday's also a blustery day with rain or showers, but it turns drier on Sunday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good evening. Coming up tonight on Farage with me, Fox, are we losing confidence in the police's ability to solve actual crimes instead of non-crimes? I'll be talking to a former assistant commissioner to find out how we reclaim trust in the police. And on the subject of crime and punishment, how much of a punishment is prison today? As we have seen the murderer of Stephen Lawrence, David Nozza Norris, posing in his cell with his smartphone, TV and Xbox, he's shown absolutely no remorse for the crime he was convicted of. Should we require repentance before a prisoner is released? And as the Labour Party conference draws to a close, we are asking Ken Livingstone for his analysis of an actual policy Keir Starmer has drawn up on their energy plans, as well as his thoughts on Rupert Hook's vile comments from yesterday. And on Talking Pints, the inspirational story of a man who lost his limbs clearing landmines in Africa and is now a marathon runner. First, though, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Lawrence, thank you. Good evening to you. The government has denied it's responsible for the downturn in the financial markets, blaming the UK's spiralling economy on the war in Ukraine. Financial Secretary to the Treasury, Andrew Griffith, also welcomed the Bank of England's timely intervention following sterling's slide, saying every major country is dealing with volatility. He says the government's plans will help both the economy and struggling households.
Every major economy is dealing with exactly these same issues. And the Bank of England has made this timely intervention, doing what it should do, what the government should do, what the Chancellor and I are focused on, is delivering that economic growth plan, which is ultimately what's going to help people. It's going to give people the confidence. It's going to create jobs in the economy and keep people in work so that they can make it through the winter, benefit from that protection in energy and continue to protect our standard of living.
Well, earlier the Chancellor told investment bankers in the city the government's committed to what he called fiscal responsibility. Kwasi Kwarteng is trying to reassure city investors that this economic plan will work. That's after the International Monetary Fund last night issued a rare statement criticising his tax-cutting measures. Now, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is demanding Parliament be recalled on this issue, and he wants to see the mini-budget by Kwasi Kwarteng reversed.
Government has clearly lost control of the economy
And unlike other situations where it may be a world event, an unexpected event that causes this sort of crisis, this is self-inflicted. This was made in Downing Street last Friday. And for what? For uncosted tax breaks for those earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. And so what the government needs to do now is recall Parliament and abandon this budget before any more damage.
Well, the new Northern Ireland Secretary has held talks with the Republic of Ireland for the first time since the cabinet reshuffle in an attempt to settle the Northern Ireland Protocol. Chris Heaton-Harris and the Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney met at Hillsborough Castle this morning. Mr Coveney said there's now a willingness in the British government to have a serious dialogue over the post-Brexit trade agreement. The European Commission has announced further sanctions against Russia after it held so-called annexation referenda in the occupied regions of Ukraine. Moscow claims 4 regions voted overwhelmingly in favour of joining the motherland Russia. But the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described the votes as a sham. She also said EU sanctions have been extended and will make the Kremlin pay for escalating the conflict in the country. Those are the headlines. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Farage with Lawrence Fox.
Amongst the many truisms passed down from parents to children over the years for them to pass on to their own children in return is sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We have all memories of feeling upset as a child at hurtful things said in the playground or at a school party which will have been eased by this simple maxim, this encouragement from our parents to be tough in the face of adversity. An emphasis on the importance of difficult situations on the development of character. But somewhere along the way, something has changed. The water has become hotter for us frogs in the saucepan of society. Even a cursory glance at crime figures informs us that sticks and stones breaking your bones doesn't matter at all to the police. It's words that do the real damage. Police who cannot find the time to investigate a burglary or a mugging because they are too busy trawling social media for hurty tweets, decorating their uniforms with political symbols of multicoloured badges and lanyards declaring allegiance to the new gods of diversity, equity and inclusion. They dance joyously at certain gatherings of kneeling people, or those who worry about petrol, will also take a cudgel to your head at certain other gatherings of those who stand for liberty and against authoritarianism, for example. Faith in the police is at an all-time low, and rightly so. Policing without fear of favour is old news. The police, like every single foundational national institution, has been captured by the rainbow shirts. Like so many things in the last 2 years, it is as if a long closed curtain has been drawn wide open, and once you have seen what lies beyond, you cannot unsee. The extraordinary assault on our civil liberties, resisted by the brave and slowed, at least for now, frees up time for the authorities to take up their favourite cause, the policing of your minds and words and the systematic demoralisation of the population via the weaponisation of hate. The bar is set high for what does and doesn't constitute hateful behaviour, and the justice system comes down hard on those who overstep it. A murderer or a violent assailant is as likely to go unpunished as a non-criminal is likely to have the police knocking at their door for retweeting a hurty meme. A journalist can be threatened with criminal arrest by the police officers for posting a video footage of an illegal immigrant on the ground that some unknown person may take offence to. This is happening. But the measure of what constitutes an offence is objective and not subjective, as so many culturally captured police forces will tell you today. Crime is not a subjective matter. It has to be proved, just as justice must be blind. Because what is at threat is so much more than a bunch of virtue-signalling TikTok police persons embarrassing the many hard-working, non-ideological policemen and women who just want to do the hard work of policing without fear or favour. What is at stake is democracy itself The whole system of government is adversarial, hateful even. Cries of order, order exist to manage and control hate, not silence, silence to stop it. The two swords links between the opposing benches in the Commons, a reminder possibly of more hateful times, is maintained still to this day. Because rigorous, heated, controlled hate lies at the very heart of our democratic system. We lose it at our peril. We must reclaim each of our sacred national institutions. They must be protected for our children, and it can be done, as was shown when 7 heavies of the Hampshire Police were deployed in 2 riot vans to escort 2 perfectly innocent men to the cells for sharing a meme I put up online, actually. Thankfully, I was there to meet them, and this appalling excuse for policing cost the Chief Constable her job. Sorry, babe. So it is with a happy heart to hear the police forces from all over the country saying that they're going to go back to doing their job, rather than pursuing political allegiances when on taxpayers' time. All it took, ladies and gentlemen, was a few brave people standing across from them and in a controlled manner hating their behaviour. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. When my kids leave the house, I say to them, if they get into trouble, not to run to a policeman, but to go into a shop or ask a lady for help. That is how low my feeling is towards the police. New Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who has told coppers to stop the symbolic gestures, promised us that we will change, and we will be watching. Public attitude towards those who keep an eye on the crooks the police have actually managed to apprehend, charge and convict has also hit a new low today, as pictures emerge of an unrepentant, gloating, murdering scumbag, David Nozza Norris, bragging about being home in 2 years. And the High Court agrees with him, for now. Tonight we're going to ask, should anybody be released from prison without showing repentance and remorse? Get in touch. Farage@gbnews.uk or tweet using the hashtag Farage on GB News. I'll be returning to all of that shortly, but first, the Labour Party conference looked like it was going so well for Sir Keir Starmer. He's laid out a renewable energy policy, claiming he will take back control of our energy production and create the great British energy company to nationalise our energy supply, bringing all those foreign-owned energy companies back to the UK people. And then yesterday, Rupert Haack lost the whip after saying that Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng was superficially black. What an insane statement. And you wouldn't know that Kwasi Kwarteng is black. She's since apologised, should have resigned in my view. Before I speak to Ken Livingstone about the Labour Party conference, GB News political editor Darren McCaffrey sat down with Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer and asked him about Rupert Haack's comments. Take a listen.
Now, Labour for a number of years grappled with anti-Semitism. We saw another Labour MP yesterday suspended for racism. Many people are saying that it's actually Labour who are the nasty party. Does Labour have a problem with racism?
Well, in relation to what happened yesterday, the Labour Party was very clear. That was racist, and we took action straight away and removed the whip. But what's happened with the Labour Party is that in the last 2 years, we have worked very, very hard to change the Labour Party, to remake the Labour Party, so that we could confidently put our plans before the public at this conference. And I think everybody who's been at our conference says the mood is one of a party that is ready to deliver, ready to govern. And having done the hard yards, changing the Labour Party, we now are facing the country to say that we have a confident plan for the future, which will change Britain for the better for the future.
Joining me now is the former Labour Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone. Ken, lovely to see you. How are you doing?
I'm not bad for an old man.
Can I just start by asking what your thoughts on the Rupert Haack comments were?
Oh, she's silly to do that, you know. She may not have realised people would perceive it as racist.
Sorry.
I know, but he
may not have realised people would perceive it as saying to someone who's superficially black.
Yeah, I mean, no, literally, she shouldn't have done it. and she has apologised. I mean, I don't think it should mean the end of her career. It's not like an openly racist bit of nonsense from someone.
What about it if it had been a white person? Would it have been the end of their career?
I don't know. I mean, I come so close to the end of my career for many of the things I've said.
Yeah. OK, all right, so you're going to sit on the fence on that one.
Yeah.
We support cancellation one way, but we don't support it in the other. Let's move on to Sakir. So he has actually developed a left-wing policy. There should be sort of choirs of angels here, because what do you think? Well, talk us through it.
I actually think that Keir Starmer is going to be the best Labour Prime Minister since Clement Attlee 75 years ago. I mean, he's a man he only came into Parliament about 7 years ago. Before that, he spent his life prosecuting murderers and rapists. He's not come into politics to be a celebrity like Boris Johnson did. I mean, he's there to make life better for us. He reminds me very much of the sort of Labour leaders we used to have in that post-war period, where it's about making a better world to live in. So, I mean, I'm more confident about Keir Starmer than any Labour leader for the last 50 years.
And what about the energy policy?
Oh, I think that's absolutely right. We've got to change the way we live. I mean, we just can't...
Why? Sorry.
Well, because...
Why do we have to change the way we live?
Because the more carbon we pump into the atmosphere...
The more the plants are happy.
Yeah, all of that, it's going to lead to our extinction. If we don't control the pollution we're putting into the atmosphere, by the end of this century, we could face extinction.
But we're 1% of the pollution. China's making a coal-fired power plant
every week.
Just
talking about...
And then building the solar panels to send over to us to virtuously worship at.
I'm not just talking about Britain. So should China, India, all nations need to scale down.
Do you think China is interested in reducing its carbon footprint?
I don't think any politician is, because politicians are focused on just staying in power in the next few years. They're not thinking what's going to happen to our planet over the next 50. And that's what's wrong with our politicians.
So you're saying the climate crisis is not a hoax?
Pardon?
The climate crisis is not a hoax, it's for real?
No, it's absolutely... I mean, literally, before I got into politics, I mean, I left school, I worked in a cancer research unit, I was surrounded by scientists. That defined the way I think. And the simple fact is, we are, at the moment, on the path to extinction, and we've got to change the way we live. And no government anywhere, whether it's left-wing or right-wing, seems to have the courage to do that, to persuade people we've got to change the way we live.
I disagree. I'd say no government has the courage to turn around and go, it's all beep. Do you know what I mean? Wouldn't it be lovely to have a party that turned around and went, I was, as I've said this before on this show, actually, that, Mrs. Struthers told me when 5S at primary school, she went, it's all, you're going to be in a burning ball of fire. And that was, how old am I, 44, so 40 years ago, and the petrol was run out. None of it's happened. None of the modelling seems to have come true. Have we not just replaced this? Is it not just a secular ideal to turn around and go, look, we've got to find a problem that we've got to solve, or are you saying that all of the science completely backs this?
We have to solve this. If I think back, when I was a kid, there was snow on the ground in London for weeks every year. I haven't seen any for 25 years. I mean, about once every 5 years it'll be a hot summer. Now, every summer is getting hotter. You just think back, about 4 weeks ago, we had that hottest day in 150,000 years. Many people died from the heat.
Hang on, were the cavemen taking readings 150,000 years ago?
Yeah, but we can our scientists are able to do that by, digging into the ground, looking at all the stuff you can extract from underground. It's all there. Our history is built into the surface of our planet.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I don't agree with you, but I totally support your right to say what you feel.
Can I say you're not alone in not agreeing with me?
Good, thank God. End the climate emergency. It doesn't need to be done. Anyway, Ken Livingston, thank you very much. Right. So now we are going back to David Norris, Nozza, who was seen taking a selfie in prison, looking like he was having a better time than anybody else in the country at the time. So joining me now is Mark Fairhurst, National Chair of the POA, Professional Trades Union for Prison Workers. Mark, should any prisoner who refuses to repent or show any remorse be even considered for release?
Well, in this particular instance, Lawrence, that prisoner will be prosecuted because it's illegal to have a mobile phone in a prison. So I doubt very much, because of his actions, if any parole board will grant an early release. I can see him getting extra time for this offence.
So when I was looking through the papers today, it said the Home Office were currently in agreement. Is what you're saying that the release of this picture and him bragging about to all the girls that he's back in town, a vile, remorseless murderer, you think this is going to put a couple of years on his sentence, do you?
I'd be very shocked if it didn't, Lawrence. I mean, you've got to think of the victims in all of this as well. And currently, Dartmoor, where he's housed, is a Category C prison, so he would have been looking forward to going to the open estate, working on a work placement in our communities to get him ready for his release. He's now in a segregation unit there, and he will be transferred to a Category B prison, so his recategorisation status will actually go more severe. So I doubt very much if the parole board will grant him any sort of release in the near future.
And more broadly, you know, prisons aren't fashionable, aren't they? You know, you don't read party manifestos about what we're going to do to the prison service. So what's morale like within the prison service itself? I have a personal friend who works as a prison officer, and he said it was a very, very difficult working environment indeed. What can the government and the public do to support prison officers?
Well, you're correct in what you say. You know, prisons are not vote winners. But morale is at rock bottom at the moment. We're losing more staff month on month than we can recruit. The pay is not adequate, even though we've had a partly substantial pay increase for new starters to try and encourage people to join the job. The trouble is retention, with the working conditions we face and the safety issues and the total lack of infrastructure investment within our prisons, because most of the public sector prisons are not modern prisons.
And would you say that prison's primary function should be punishment or rehabilitation?
Well, the punishment is the loss of liberty. What we're there to do is hopefully give prisoners hope, try and rehabilitate them and try and get them educated or to a standard where they can get a work skill which will increase their employability so they can actually contribute to society. That's the whole process that we want to go through, but we've got to have decent, secure and safe prisons for everybody, including staff. If a prisoner doesn't feel safe, they'll never reform. And we need a major investment. We need to double our staffing levels. And we need to give people hope. Let's get investment in our prisons and serve the public.
Bring people hope. Amen to that. Thank you so much, Mark Fairhurst, National Chair of the POA, the Professional Trades Union for Prison Workers. Right, so coming up on Farage, no, Fox for me for a bit, millions are set to strike, sparked by the walkouts from train staff. Now, posties are going to strike too, and it could be firefighters next. Worrying times, an escalation perhaps. I will be back shortly.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel, And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. Before the break, I asked you, should anybody be released from prison without showing remorse and repentance? As usual, you've been getting in touch. Fiona says some will never show remorse or admit guilt, but once they've served their sentence, they must be released. That is how the justice system works. Entitled That View. Dave says, yes, what if they're protesting their innocence? That's always a problem. Lisa, simple answer, no. If you do the crime, then you should do the time and no exceptions. Roger says, the modern prison system is no deterrent. Inmates are now referred to as guests. Yes, I know. In order to protect their human rights that they lost by being convicted. Good point, Roger. Eric says, murderers should not get out, full stop. I couldn't agree with you more, especially child murderers. As usual, you get in touch with us. Get in touch at farage@gbnews.uk or tweet using the hashtag Farage on GB News. Right, that was a tongue twister. Royal Mail Workers have voted for yet more strike action over pay and jobs terms, which could have a devastating effect on the two biggest shopping days that lead up to Christmas, Black Friday and the 25th of November, and Cyber Monday on the 28th of November. Who invented these terrible dates? Tomorrow, the Fire Brigade Union will be holding an online members meeting following their 2% pay offer from the fire service employers, which has since been rejected. The union are now preparing to ballot members on whether to strike action. What is already clear is that this is an escalation of potential strike action. So I am joined by Paul Embry, a trade unionist and writer. Good evening, Paul. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Lawrence. Good to be with you.
You too. Now, look, the public are facing a choice between heating or eating this year, Christmas, and the economy is crashing. Are you telling me that they won't get a fire engine should everything go badly?
Well, I hope not, but the reality is that the Fire Brigade Union, of which I'm a member, I'm a firefighter, of course, is balloting for strike action. And it's balloting for strike action, Lawrence, I have to say, for what are genuine and legitimate reasons. Firefighters this year have been offered a 2% increase, one of the worst pay offers in the public sector. These are firefighters who worked throughout the pandemic. These were firefighters who were in the front line during the recent wildfires. These are firefighters who, like many other workers, have suffered poor wage increases over the last 10, 12 years. And for the fire service employers to come to us and say, you're only worth 2%, and we have asked them to improve that offer and they've refused to do so, I just have to say I think is completely unacceptable. So firefighters are really at the end of their tether, and they feel now that the only way to make the employers and the government sit up and listen, because the government is complicit in this as well, is to take strike action. Hopefully it won't come to that, but unless somebody puts more money on the table, then it probably will.
But so I completely understand the entirety of your point. Unlike a tube driver whose striking is just going to ruin someone's journey to work, a fireman striking, or a fire person striking, I'm not sure what the appropriate political correct term is, could actually cost someone their lives. Where does one draw the balance between fair pay and saving lives?
Look, it's a perfectly fair question. I've been a firefighter for 25 years. I've taken strike action on 4 occasions during those 25 years. And I can tell you, Lawrence, it's an agonising decision for any firefighter. You don't join the fire service to withdraw your labour. You join the fire service to save people. But, I just simply ask people to bear in mind the position that firefighters are in. At the moment, firefighters are struggling to make ends meet. Now, these are emergency service workers. They are critical to the functioning of our country in all sorts of ways. And we've got firefighters who are struggling to pay the mortgage. The firefighters are struggling to pay their bills, struggling to feed their family. And this is not a first resort. I have to say that. It never is a first resort. I mean, there have been long negotiations over this, as there always is whenever we've taken strike action. But we feel we're in a position where the government is saying to us, look, or the employers, I should say, are saying to us 2% is on the table, and we're looking at inflation of 9%. We're looking at our real wages having fallen by something like £4,000 over the last decade. It really is a crisis point for many firefighters, and they feel they've got no choice but to take that step of strike action.
So if I was to put you in charge of everything to do with firefighters tomorrow, what would you do?
Well, if I were a fire service employer, I would be lobbying the government hard to fund the fire service better so that they can make improved pay offers to firefighters. If I were a government minister, I would be making that commitment to fund the fire service. We're going through at the moment, Lawrence, the biggest pay squeeze since the Napoleonic Wars. We're seeing not just firefighters, but workers across the board are seeing their living standards crash. They're seeing real wages falling. People are struggling to make ends meet. And that is a situation that needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, we'll have more and more bouts of this industrial unrest.
Do you think that this may be the first spark in a wildfire of strikes across the country as people come to terms with the cost of the lockdown crisis and the unprecedented inflation and economic crisis that we are staring down the barrel of?
I think it's a situation that's going to intensify in terms of the industrial action that's taking place. As you touched on in the introduction, Royal Mail workers as well. There's also teachers potentially balloting, NHS workers. We know barristers have taken strike action. So these are, in many cases, workers who do not withdraw their labour easily, and certainly not as a first step. And I have to make the point as well, Lawrence, these workers have looked at the recent mini budget last week, and they've seen what I would describe as the grotesque unfairness of the government cutting taxes for some of the richest people in our society on some kind of promise that the wealth is going to trickle down to the rest of us, which we're all pretty sceptical about for good reason. And they're thinking, hold on, what's the government's priorities here? Firefighters, as I said, on the front line in the pandemic, on the front line all the time, including the recent wildfires, are being told 2%. And the wealthiest are being told, there you go, you can have thousands of pounds extra every year in unfunded tax cuts. So with an agenda like that at the top of the government, I have to say it won't be surprising if we see more and more of this resistance coming to the fore.
Well, thank you, Paul. I have to say that, yeah, some teachers, I wouldn't mind if they went on permanent strike. But anyway, lovely to see you this evening. See you later. Like I said, it's not just firefighters who are set to strike, it's posties too. And Alan Jones, the Press Association's industrial correspondent, joins me. Alan, what is the background to the Royal Mail's strikes?
Well, it's very similar to all the other background disputes which are raging at the moment. So it's pay and conditions. Like most, if not all, the groups of workers taking action now, they're waiting for a decent pay rise. You know, a lot of these people worked right throughout the pandemic. They haven't had a pay rise for a couple of years, expecting a pay rise, and they haven't had one which matches what they want. And, you know, while all this has happened, inflation has gone out of control almost. So it's inflation which is driving all these disputes. Royal Mail also want to make some efficiencies and changes to work to terms and conditions, and actually it's that which has sparked the latest outbreak of strikes. So they're on strike on Friday, on Saturday, and they announced last night another 19 days of strikes running from October right to early December, which was quite a dramatic escalation of that dispute.
Does this play into the hands of someone like DPD, for example, or do DPD use the Royal Mail? I mean, is this just going to play down to courier services?
I mean, it probably will. I mean, you know, Royal Mail are making the point that if these strikes are damaging them financially, they say they're losing £1 million a day. We're coming up to the pre-Christmas period, the busiest time of year for Royal Mail. So if all these strikes go ahead, and if more are called in December, which is entirely possible the way things are going, that is really going to damage Royal Mail. And of course, competitors will come in. So, you know, it's a balancing act for the union as well. The union says that they're trying to save the service, trying to save jobs. So, you know, it's properly deadlocked, although I have heard in the last hour, actually, that there is going to be some kind of meeting tomorrow. I mean, there's no optimism or expectation at all that it's going to provide a breakthrough, but, you know, that might just be the beginning of something.
Well, fingers crossed for Christmas. We don't want to have all the children stopping believing in Santa. Thank you, Alan Jones. The Press Association's industrial correspondent joins me. As I alluded to at the start of the show, policing is hot on the agenda. After the new Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley said in an interview, "I'm more focused, frankly, on trust and crime. I think the issue for the police is about operating without fear or favour, amen. We shouldn't show allegiance to any political cause, again, amen, whether it's had 99% public support or 1% public support. I need to get the basics right, such as turning up to burglaries," you would have thought. Joining me now to discuss this is former Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Met Police, Stephen Roberts. Stephen, what can be done to restore the public's faith in the police?
I think there's some fairly basic things, and the new Commissioner, Sir Mark, has alluded to those. The turning up at a burglary. In truth, it makes very little practical sense to turn up to a burglary that's happened many hours before and where the presence of a uniformed police officer isn't going to do anything to help solve the crime. What you need there are forensic scientists to take samples of DNA that might be there, of fingerprints, to look for forensic evidence. But the reality is, and I've been burgled myself twice.
Me too, I had a fight with a burglar in my own house. The police didn't do anything about it.
When somebody has been traumatised by having their home invaded, one of the things that makes them feel that somebody cares, frankly, is that the police turn up, do what they can, be reassuring. I mean, it almost sounds like sort of being cuddling.
Like the good old days.
Yes, like the good old days, exactly.
Doing what it says on the tin.
It is a practical demonstration that somebody actually cares, and that matters.
Yeah.
Turning up to see the victims of crime matters because it does reassure. It does make people feel more cared for. And above all, that is what the police service is about, preventing crime and making people feel more secure. It is a step in the right direction.
Thank you, good. And what role did the College of Policing play in all of this?
The College of Policing was brought into existence to try and standardise practice nationally, to try and professionalise the police service in terms of providing well-structured procedures, well-structured policies. It has its critics.
Well, it's an unelected organisation made up of a bunch of people that have turned the police force into the rainbow shirts, as we saw with Darren Brady in Hampshire, and as we see across the country. Police forces are focusing solely on ideological political posturing and not going to people's houses as they've been burgled. As you've said, should we demand that? I was at the Queen's. I wasn't at the Queen. I was watching the Queen's funeral procession, and I saw a brief glimmer of what policing was like in my youth, which was these very smartly turned out policemen, not adorned with rainbow lanyards and ridiculous things, just stood there, and I felt a huge sense of confidence. Should we ban the police from wearing any form of political symbol whatsoever? Should the police be returned to simple blacks? I think they're called blacks, is that correct? Whatever they wear, their uniforms. Their uniforms. It's standard uniforms, and would that bring us back faith in the police and see them walking on the streets rather than hurtling through our Twitter accounts, as we saw with Sussex Police yesterday, saying this is a woman. No, it wasn't a woman. It's a bloke, mate. That's the College of Policing, is it not? No, I don't think it's fair to blame the College of Policing. Why not? For those sort of abuses. Those sort of abuses. Where does it come from then? If it's national, if you've got Harry Miller getting chased down by the police to check his thinking. You got this going across every police force. Why is it not the College of Policing? You said the College of Policing is brought in to standardise police procedure. Well, they have standardised police procedure. They've turned it into basically the rainbow shirts of the woke wing of the Pride movement, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's unfair to blame the College of Policing for that. Why? Some of these abuses, and I would regard them as abuses. I make no bones about that. Yeah. In a sense, police officers trying to respond to what they believe to be the public agenda. That's not their job, though. No, it isn't their job. Get off your knees at Black Lives Matter marches. The officers who took the knee at the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, one or two of them I actually know. They believed that they were doing something that was respectful, that was showing an understanding of the demonstration, and might actually have helped to keep that demonstration peaceful. Yeah. They believed in good faith that was the case. I think they were wrong.
I remember as a young constable, I marched alongside British National Party demonstrations, not because I supported the British National Party or felt the need to show any support for the British National Party, but because those individuals, as long as they stayed within the law, had a perfect right to demonstrate their opinions.
You didn't take
whatever I thought of them.
You didn't take your knee to the British National Party.
Nor would I have taken the knee.
But these officers are taking the knee to an organisation which is basically a Ponzi scheme which funds someone who's buying up half of Topanga Canyon and paying off her mates £975,000. It's a complete Ponzi scheme. The police should be utterly ashamed of the way that they behave towards Black Lives Matter and utterly ashamed of the way they behave towards Pride. Would you agree? The police should be an absolutely anti-political organisation. And I spoke to someone very senior in the Metropolitan Police when I ran for London Mayor. I won. And I said to them, is the Metropolitan Police an anti-racist police organisation? And he said, yes, it is. Now, anti-racism is part of woke ideology, is part of all of this rainbow pride flag movement of diversity, equity and inclusion. Should we get anti-racism out of the police as well?
No, we shouldn't.
Why not?
Because racism is offensive to everybody.
I did not say that. I didn't ask you that. I said, should we get anti-racism out of the police force?
Yes, because if the police service is being racist, and it is often accused of racism, it needs to be able to demonstrate that actually it believes in treating everybody fairly, irrespective of their race, their creed, their colour, and their wealth. These are fundamental elements of democratic policing.
Without fear or favour, then?
Without fear or favour.
Yeah, so why the political posturing?
But when you put on the blue serge, as it's actually referred to, then you put away whatever your personal beliefs are. Your job and your duty is simply to treat everybody equally, to treat everybody with respect.
But they don't do this. If they did this, it would be fine. You watch them TikToking along to a pride protest or a Just Stop Oil, someone who's glued themselves to their own forehead out of genius that they are. But you go and stand and protest lockdowns, which have destroyed the economy in the face this year, and you'll get a cosh over the head. The two-tier policing, I think, has been the problem that the public look at. And they go, well, you're not policing things fairly. Where is it coming from? It must be coming from the College of Policing, surely.
No, I don't think it's coming from the College of Policing. I think it's coming from probably a lack of clear guidance. Officers on, for example, the Black Lives Matter demo should have been told this is not an acceptable thing to do. You police this demonstration exactly as you would police any other demonstration. You show respect for the people demonstrating, but you make...
Why should you show respect for them?
Police officers should show respect for everybody.
No, they should show tolerance and they should apply the law to everybody, should they not?
They should apply the law to everybody, but they should show respect to everybody.
Fair enough.
Yes. Not least because that's the best way to maintain the peace and to allow the law to be enforced when it needs to be enforced. Unless the police are seen as legitimate, when the law needs to be enforced in sometimes unpopular ways, people don't obey the law. The power of the police service is not to be able to enforce irrespective of the public views. The police service is only able to maintain the peace if, broadly speaking, they maintain the respect of the community as a whole.
And police without fear or favour.
And police without fear or favour.
So we agree on this. So I don't mean to push at you so hard. I just find it so frustrating when I see a Velcroed on Pride Union flag on the back of someone's stab vest. I just think, what are you doing? Leave that to Harry Kane and his bunch of kneeling Muppets. Anyway, thank you so much. Stephen Roberts, former Deputy Assistant Commissioner at the Metropolitan Police. Right, now, my What the Fox moment of the day. As passengers, we have an appetite for cheaper flights, quicker security queues, maybe the option to not have to pay to select your seat. But do not fear, Virgin Atlantic have saved our travel woes as they will now allow their male pilots and crew to stick on one of their beautiful red skirts, in what I'm sure we can all agree is a much-needed change to a travel routine. That's equality for you, Virgin Atlantic. Thank you. Right, now, so the changes will not be limited to Virgin Atlantic. They've said that they want to embrace diversity. The carrier has changed its ticketing system to allow gender-neutral markers. Their commercial chief said, "We want to embrace their individuality and be their true selves at work." He added, "At Virgin Atlantic, we believe that everyone can take on the world, no matter who they are. We want to allow people to wear the uniform that best suits them and how they identify, whether they're boys or girls, and ensure that our customers are addressed by their preferred pronouns. Mine are, I want to be addressed by my preferred adjectives, which are stunning and brave. I'm sure upon landing in Qatar ahead of the World Cup this year, such changes will be welcomed, most certainly celebrated by all." I can just imagine a bunch of Virgin Atlantic people ripping off their skirts and going, "No, I'm not gay, don't worry about me, please don't throw me off a building." Anyway, some more of your reactions to my question. Should anyone be released from prison without showing remorse? Peter says, repentance and admission is not a factor of a criminal's prison sentence. The sentence, acceptable or otherwise, is the punishment, irrespective of the criminal's admission. Yes, but do you want that person bragging and coming back out into society, totally unreformed? That's what I would say. At least some acknowledgement of what they did wrong, I think, would be crucial. Otherwise, I'd see them as a danger to the streets. Anyway, John says, "The thought of killers walking the streets again with no remorse is utterly sickening." I'm on your team, John. Another viewer says, "I'm afraid if they have served their sentence, then they should be freed. Maybe they should real focus should be on the length of their sentence." Sue says, "Life for a life, lock them up, throw away the key." I do love a Sue in my life. Up next is the GB New Tavern has opened its doors, and I will be joined by speaker and landmine survivor Chris Moon.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The GB News Tavern is open. It's beer time and talking pints. I am joined by Chris Moon. I suppose I have to start with, you're doing all right, aren't you?
Yes.
Life's working out well for you.
It is.
What taught me through this contraption?
Okay,
and
so
how it came to pass?
There is, after I left the army...
Can we cheers each other? So
good health.
Yours.
Great to meet you, Lawrence.
Sancho.
And so, after I left the army, I wanted to do something that made a difference. I went to work for a charity clearing landmines, obviously with considerable success because I found the very thing we were looking for. Ironically, doing the least dangerous thing I ever did, walking back up a safe lane, there was a landmine the blokes couldn't locate for complex technical reasons, stepped on it, right leg off and lower right arm later amputated. And I was incredibly lucky to survive. And when I got out of hospital, I started to research prosthesis. And before I joined the army, I came from a farming background. And I found out that the most effective hand replacement is actually this. So I've been very involved with research and into prosthetics over the last 20 years, and the electrical hands look really, really good. And it's really important to say that I understand entirely why many people want them, because when they first came out, people said, why? When people were asked who'd been given them, why do you want to keep it? They'd said, because the first time I feel part of the human race. So, you know, it's individual choice, and I don't want something that looks like a hand. I want something that's maximum function.
It's much cooler.
Well, maximum function, and it's operated by a strap around my shoulder. The elastic bands close it. Would you like to demonstrate? Pop a testicle in.
Stop it! I have to concentrate.
Okay.
Would it be game over for future children?
No.
No. Okay.
Especially as for reasons of health and safety, I had to halt the demonstration. So I've got a small holding. I love gardening. I've got loads to do. I've got a very busy working life. So I want something that's as functional as possible. And I used to break the electrical hands. And they're really expensive. This was, I think, $400 about 20 years ago. And for me, it works really well. But once again, I entirely understand why some people want something that looks like a limb.
OK, so you come across as someone who's put a remarkably optimistic and brave face on what is a completely life-changing predicament to find yourself in. And, you know, just the thought of you being there doing this for other human beings so that young kids may not run across a path and get blown up by a mine. You've suffered that. How do you cope with the loss of a limb?
OK, I think firstly to say different people do it in different ways, and there's no right or wrong answers, and some people may not feel they're able to cope, and I entirely understand that. So I can only talk about my experience. I think the first thing is to be totally realistic, and I think a lot of recovery is about hearing what you don't want to hear as much as it is about telling people what you don't want to tell them. So that would be my starting point. What is it about this that I don't want to hear? Well, the reality is it's not going to grow back, is it? Mm-hmm. So it's never going to be over. So you have to think about it in a way that's constructive. And a lot of my friends and family said, look, Chris Moon's life is over because his hobbies, running, motorcycling, gardening and mountaineering, and above all, he lives for his work, clearing landmines. His life's over because everything requires 2 arms and 2 legs. Nothing could be further than the truth. Now, I'm not naturally optimistic or positive person, but I do the work because we have a choice. And I guess what I learned before I was blown up, I got taken prisoner by Khmer guerrillas in Cambodia. We were given a guarantee of security by the United Nations.
You negotiated your own release?
Yes, but we were incredibly fortunate that we met a commander who was... we were taken to a commander who was modern. It was possible to persuade him not to put us into the prisoner handling system, which would have been the end. So we were incredibly fortunate. And I realised at the end of that, I thought, what have I learned from this? And I thought, we choose the way we think. And subsequently, I've studied human behaviour. I've done lots of work with psychologists and psychiatrists. And we do choose the way we think. And although it doesn't always feel like it, the way we feel is determined by the way we think. So the starting point for me is, look, I've got to accept this reality, and I get why all my family and friends think my life's over, but it isn't, because I'm going to be thankful for what I have. And every morning I've got a stark choice. Am I going to look on what I don't have and what's difficult in my life, or am I going to be thankful for what I have and what I can do? And I think gratitude heals, and I force myself to be thankful. And it's not always easy. If it's difficult, get a book and write it down at the end of every day, because we have so much that we take for granted.
So much. And what you're saying is, you know, catastrophic thinking will come to all of us anyway, you know, because the mind is injured and wounded as well. Yeah. As well as you've had a catastrophic injury. Yeah. So what you're talking about here is, I don't know, it sounds a little bit like cognitive behavioural therapy, things like this. I think it is. Along this area. I hear lots of positive stuff about that. But to see you filled with such optimism, but to admit your vulnerability and the fact that it's work, as you say, is so inspiring. Do you, in terms of like young people today and the military today and you know, and public service today, are you seeing that level of work?
I think what we need to do is recognise that we have a choice, because when you are really hurt, it doesn't feel like you have any choice. And, you know, we know that the flight, fight, flight response kicks in when we have a traumatic situation. So we'll have all these chemicals going around our bodies that may stop us thinking naturally. So I think we've got to recognise that between a stimulus and a response, there is a slight pause. And it's about developing techniques to own the pause, to stop our natural emotional reactions coming in, the fight, flight, fright response.
Do you believe in God?
Yeah, I do believe there's power of good, creativity, something that is beyond us. I guess nearly dying many times has made me more spiritual, but far less religious.
Yeah.
Not that I in any way don't respect other people's views and religions. I do, of course, and I have a passionate belief in the dignity of the individual. But for me, yeah, I think quantum physics tells us energy can't be destroyed. It simply changes its form. And, yeah.
Chris?
Are we going to drink to that?
I'm going to drink to that, and I'm just going to thank you because you have made my day. Thank you for your courage, your bravery and your optimism. You're an example. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Tragically, there are just a couple of minutes left for me to answer your questions from home in the Outfox the Fox. Chris is going to stay with me and help me because he's much smarter than I am. Kevin asks, if you're in charge of the government purse strings, what would you do differently? I would make the government's purse a lot smaller. That's what I'd do. Right, Alan asks, can we afford public services wage demands? What do you think?
I think it's a real conundrum. I wouldn't commit myself either way without looking at the statistics and the speaking to the experts. I think it's really complex.
Right. And Mick is asking, is Margaret Thatcher the best advertisement for levelling up in the history of this country? Well, she levelled me up to 3 dogs, so I now have a dachshund called Margaret Thatcher. Anyway, Laura asks, do you see Kemi Badenoch as a future PM? We hail Queen Kemi. That's all I have to say to that one. Robert asks, when waiting lists are as long as your arms, do you think it's a good idea to spend millions on diversity advisors? I think diversity advisors are the biggest waste of money this country has ever come up with as an idea. Full stop. Right, so I am done for the day. Coming up next is Mark Stein, the wonderful Mark Stein. Mark, what's the score?
Hey, Lawrence, good to see you. I got to get a dachshund named for Margaret Thatcher too. I think every host on GB News needs a Margaret Thatcher dachshund. It ought to be compulsory. Can we get one in here before the start of the show? We got lots of things coming up for you. We're going to do the Great Reset with best-selling author Mark Morano. It's real, it's happening. And if you thought, oh, it's a big reset, they're going to be taking, 20, 30, 40 years to do it. No. They want to do it all basically in the next 10 and a half months or so. We're going to be talking about the mysterious things going on in the Baltic Sea, which is now full of methane. Don't go swimming in there. Who's to blame? Putin? Biden? Liz Truss? We're going to try and get to the bottom of that. It's all coming up right after the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Outbreaks of rain will spread to some areas overnight with clear spells in other places and a chilly start for Thursday. Low pressure at the moment towards Denmark, and we've still got this rather cool northerly airflow. It's bringing a number of showers and in places some more persistent rain, for example. An occluded front heading into eastern Scotland, northern England through the evening will bring persistent rain in places. That will sink south into central parts of the UK, eventually clearing into Wales and the southwest by dawn, turning more showery as it pushes south. Clear spells following. Under those clear skies, some mist and fog forming across the Midlands, eastern England, for example, and a chilly start in places first thing Thursday, where we get those clear spells. Temperatures in some spots into the low single figures. But after any mist and fog clear, after the sun warms things up, actually for many, it's a brighter afternoon. Sunny spells, but there will be further showers coming along, especially for eastern Scotland, eastern parts of England, into central areas. Temperatures, though, up a degree or so compared with Wednesday. We're looking at 18 Celsius, the top temperature there for parts of Wales and the southwest. Down to Thursday evening, areas of showers will push south, fading away, and lengthy clear spells then for many, at least at first. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, thicker clouds start to arrive, the wind picks up, and by the early hours, outbreaks of rain into the far northwest. That'll keep things mild here, but across central and eastern parts of the UK, well, it's a colder night to come with low single figures in places and some dense fog around first thing Friday. The fog will last until around mid-morning, then it'll clear. Bright skies follow for the Midlands, East Anglia and the South East, at least for a time, before wind and rain sweep in from the west. Heavy rain, particularly over western hills, and strong winds reaching gale force in exposed spots. Saturday's also a blustery day with rain or showers, but it turns drier on Sunday.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Mark Dolan. We'll find out more about the shocking and sinister idea of giving every member of the public a personal carbon allowance. The World Economic Forum's dystopian attempt to strip our freedoms in the name of net zero. Social commentator Leah Halpern joins us to explain more about this concerted attack on our way of life. Plus, we've got